welcome back to Infamous Indy. I'm your host, That Dead Girl, and if this is your first time joining us, basically what I do here is I sit down with you all and I share with you a true crime story from my home state of Indiana. And today I have some very special co-hosts. Adam is normally home, while I'm filming, but he's actually still at work. So my cat wrangler, you know, isn't available at the moment. So you're gonna see cats walking in and out of frame and little cattails and all of that. Tyrion is actually asleep behind me, and Jack, is walking around back there. And then I have Zero down here at my feet, but I'm sure at some point he'll make an appearance as well, but such is the life of a crazy cat lady. In the spirit of Friday the 13th, I definitely wanted to share with you all a highly requested story. And I know, obviously, some of you have heard of this story and some of you may have not. We are going to be talking about the Burger Chef murders today. This was a crime that took place during a time in Indianapolis history where there was a lot of shit going on. Let me tell you, the Speedway bombings, just all kinds of crazy shit. But the thing about this particular case is the fact that it's been, I believe well over 5 decades now since the crime itself actually happened, and it still remains unsolved. With that being said, let's get right into our very special Friday the 13th episode, and let's start talking about the Burger Chef murders. On the night of Friday, November 17th, 1978, something very sinister would occur at the Burger Chef restaurant located in Speedway, Indiana. 4 young employees had gone missing in initially what was thought to be a petty theft of cash from the restaurant safe. Assistant manager Jane Freet, who was only 20 years old at the time, was described as being a great leader with a great sense of humor and a heart of gold. 16-year-old Mark Flemons, who was known to be very friendly and selfless and also known for his great sense of style. Daniel Davis, who was also 16 years old at this time, was a very talented photographer and who was always known to make his loved ones laugh and smile. 18-year-old Ruth Ellen Shelton was a very kind, creative, honest girl who had a strong passion for music. So, before we kind of dig into more of the details of this crime, I know some of you out there are probably like, what the fuck is a Burger Chef? So, Burger Chef used to be a major restaurant chain, and they competed with the likes of McDonald's and Wendy's, basically. The restaurant chain ended up fizzling out around the early 1980s, and essentially everybody really forgot Burger Chef ever even existed. In fact, the case that we're going to be talking about today is one of the main reasons why people actually still remember Burger Chef. Now, as I said before, 4 employees were scheduled to staff the restaurant on this particular night. It had been a pretty normal, boring night, and, the 4 began to close up the restaurant around 11 p.m. as normal. And this was actually the last time that the 4 employees were confirmed to actually still be inside the restaurant. Around midnight, fellow employee Brian Kring was on his way home from a date, actually, and he decided to just drop by the restaurant, say hello to his coworkers, and, maybe help them close down. Upon arriving at the restaurant, he immediately knew that something just wasn't right. So the first thing he notices actually is that the rear door of the restaurant, which definitely should be locked, at night, any other time of the day, really, should be locked, and it's standing wide open. When Brian entered the restaurant, he would notice that there were still food wrappers and trash, on the tables, which at closing time, if they start closing at 11, surely by then that they would have all of the trash cleaned up. So this was definitely strange and highly unusual to Brian. He began to call out to his fellow employees, hey, where are you guys at? And he got no response. So he makes his way back through the restaurant, and he actually ends up going into the office area. As he entered the office, he noticed that the safe was open and all of the cash trays that, are kept in the register and in the safe were empty. And the safe was also empty as well. He would also notice an empty, used roll of duct tape nearby and empty currency bags on the floor as well. And obviously, he can see, something's definitely not right here. The money's gone, the door's wide open. There's still trash everywhere. Nothing's been done. But his main concern at this point in time was that all 4 employees scheduled to work that night were nowhere to be found. So Brian Kring is actually very worried at this point in time. So he actually does end up calling the police. And as he's calling the police, he actually looks out the window, to see if he can see anything. And he actually notices that Jane's white Chevy Vega, which should be in the parking lot, is gone. So police are called and they actually end up showing up to the restaurant, early Saturday morning. Obviously, the police noted that the safe was open and the restaurant had been entirely emptied of cash, a total of $581. This amount of money, which by today's standards would be around $2,100 roughly, back then, $581, that's considered to be just a petty theft. Cops even theorized that the employees themselves had taken the cash and perhaps they had gone out, for a night of partying and joyriding. So basically, the police's impression is that there was really nothing suspicious going on here. They just thought that there was nothing more to this incident, even though, the employees' personal effects, such as their purses and coats, were actually left behind. The police just chalked it up to, 4 kids having a wild, crazy night, and, they'll turn up eventually, so there's really just nothing to worry about here. But as Saturday morning, rolled around, the 4's families and friends, still hadn't heard or seen from them. To make matters worse, since police thought that the employees were responsible for the theft in the restaurant, they actually allowed the restaurant itself to open as normal the very next day. When employees arrived the next morning to, open the restaurant, they would go on to clean the restaurant as normal, essentially destroying any evidence that may have been left behind. Something very important. So not only did police not close off the restaurant and declare it a crime scene, they also took no photographs and did not dust for fingerprints. In fact, police did not collect a single piece of evidence from the scene at all. Later, police realized, hey, we really fucked up here. And, they even tried to restage the crime scene themselves from memory, but it was too late. So obviously, these 4 employees did not show up for their shifts on Saturday night, and no one had seen or heard from any of them. So sometime on Saturday, Jane's car was actually found abandoned in a parking lot, partially locked. And it was then that police finally began to realize the magnitude of the situation. Concerns were beginning to grow, and, now it's becoming evident that the 4 employees were abducted sometime from the restaurant on Friday night. Police now believe that the 4 were potentially abducted as they took out the trash that night out the back door, as they were closing down the restaurant. And you remember we talked about how when Brian Kring showed up to the restaurant, the back door was, left wide open. So yeah, that definitely kind of makes sense. Police would actually end up talking to a young boy who was walking either past or through the parking lot of the Burger Chef, with a friend. And it was nighttime, and he actually saw an orange and white van parked out front. And, he thought it was kind of odd simply because he knew that the restaurant was closed. So he and his friend, kind of reluctantly walk past. And as they do, they see these 2 men. So the 2 men stop the young boys and they actually kind of pretended to be law enforcement, asking them for their IDs, asking them what they were doing out so late. and all those things. So the men looked at the boys' IDs and then gave them some sort of spiel about, you shouldn't be out here this late. It's not very safe, get on home. So this boy, he tells police this, and, he just felt that it was odd because the men didn't seem like police officers at all. He would go on to describe the two men, one had dark hair and a beard, and the other was very tall, pale, with light colored hair and blue eyes. And from this description, police would have composite sketches drawn up, and they would actually go on to have busts made, that resembled the description that the boy gave. So basically at this point, other than this young boy's statement and what very little they were able to say from the crime scene, they have absolutely no clue what has happened to these four young people. And the whole situation itself is just so bizarre and so odd, but I don't think anyone really could have guessed, what was about to happen next. On Sunday afternoon, just 2 days after the disappearance of the four employees, two hikers actually found the four employees' bodies in a wooded area, still dressed in their Burger Chef uniforms. And like I said, the bodies were found in a wooded, rural sort of area. I believe it was near a park and also not too far from a police station. But these bodies were actually found in Johnson County, which was more than 20 miles away from the Burger Chef restaurant. And this scene was just brutal. 16-year-old Daniel Davis was shot execution style in the head with a .35 caliber firearm. 18-year-old Ruth Ann Shelton would suffer the same fate. 20-year-old Jane Freet had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. And there was so much force used in this stabbing that the handle of the knife had actually broken off, and the actual blade of the knife had to be retrieved later during an autopsy. 16-year-old Mark Flemings, and it really just pains me the most to talk about him because he actually wasn't even scheduled to work that night. He was actually taking a shift, for another coworker. But it was later determined that he had actually been bludgeoned to death, possibly with a tow chain that was actually found at the scene of the crime. And his cause of death would end up being actually that he choked on his own blood. How just shitty is that? It's just like Clerks. I wasn't even supposed to be here today. Like, ugh. That's probably got to be like one of the worst ways that someone could ever just die. So strangely enough, all of the victims, jewelry and wallets and all of that were found intact. No money missing, nothing like that. So this leads police to believe that, maybe money isn't the motive here. And with all of the victims being killed in such different ways, it also leads police to believe that maybe there is more than one perpetrator. So basically now police not only have, a robbery on their hands, but they also have an abduction and a mass murder. So I definitely feel like I say this a lot, especially when I'm referring to police, but if they had just done their jobs, like maybe we would have some sort of answer today. And as I mentioned before, this case is still open and unsolved, and it's in its 5th decade, and I really feel like not very many strides have been made in the investigation. And not for a lack of trying, it's just the fact that the officers who initially showed up to the scene destroyed any and all evidence by not declaring it a crime scene and not taking evidence. The fact that they even thought that these four people who had never shown any signs of being a thief or any kind of negative anything really, the fact that they would even assume that these kids would just take this money is just insane to me. Like, I really just don't even understand how they even thought that that was an option. Oh, the employees took the money. It must have been them, they're just going to go joyriding party. Like, no. The car was gone. The money was gone. First of all, they worked there. Why would they jeopardize their job? Why would they steal the money in the first place? What was the motive behind this thought? Also, why the hell would someone steal a large amount of money from a business and then leave all of their personal belongings behind? And another point that I did actually want to make, this happened in late November. If you're from Indiana, you definitely know that November ain't no bitch. It's cold, okay? So nobody in their right mind is going to leave their coat behind in November in Indiana. There's just absolutely no way. And like I said, none of these people had a history of anything bad at all. Why? Just why? And another thing to note is that their families weren't immediately contacted. I believe I read that they were actually contacted the next day, only after they're inquiring, where's my daughter? Where's my son? Definitely, definitely, definitely a botched investigation. Like, it's just mind boggling. Like, I don't even know how anyone could call this police work. Getting a little heated, but honestly, I don't know a lot, but I do know that these cops messed up this investigation, and because of that, these 4 young people were murdered, and we still don't have an answer. We still don't know the truth. There is no justice for them or their families. This case is just absolutely insane, and it is definitely going to take me a couple of videos to share with you all just all of the ridiculous details. In the next video, I'm really going to be digging into all of the potential suspects. I mean, that in itself needs its own video because it's that messed up. There's just so much. And as you can imagine, like I said, 5 decades. It's a mess. And we are definitely going to be getting more into that mess in the next video. As always, thank you for watching. Also, thank you for joining us for a very special Friday the 13th episode. That's something I'm definitely going to be doing again in the future. Thank you to all of my returning viewers. You guys are the best. And if you're new here, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Always, always, always feel free to share my content if you like what I'm doing here at Infamous Indy. I'm also always open to your suggestions for content because I'm always, on the lookout for things that have happened here that I may not know about. So if you have a suggestion, please do feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments, and I definitely do read those and I keep up with it daily. So let's get a conversation started. I do have lots of new content coming up. I'm going to be working on the next video in my Indie Haunt series, and we are going to be talking about Devil's Gate in Brazil, Indiana. And I'm also going to be working hard on part 2 of the Heather Norris story. So definitely be on the lookout for those. Thank you to my lovely co-host, Tyrion. Yes, he is named after Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones, but he's just been napping the whole time, so he's such a great help. And as always, don't forget to stay spooky, keep it creepy, and watch your back out there because it's a crazy fucking world.